Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with Friday, April 14th, spoilers and analysis for the Amonkhet. There is some good ones. We only have really, I believe, uncommons and commons left. They're going to fill out the entire set. This looks to be a very fun draft set, just because I like draft sets that are a bit more complicated. I'm not a big fan of like duh cards when it comes to picking commons and uncommons that are just absolute, yeah, I'm going to pick this up. I like sets where you need to figure out a strategy. I guess the flip side of that though is once the top strategies are figured out, then it becomes a little bit overdrafted. Like that's been my experience with Modern Masters. My last league I played, don't get me started on how much I hate leagues on MTGO though, because of you don't play against people in your own pod. You play against just random people in the league. And with Modern Masters, my last league, I drafted blue, white flash, and played 3 blue-white flash decks in a row. So anyway, I think that I'm starting to identify some of the strategies for this particular set. We'll go over an entire separate draft video once we have them all spoiled and start testing it out and see what we can come up with as far as the different strategies. So anyway, let me apologize in advance for the kind of hollow audio. This has been one of the most stressful weeks of my YouTube career. I hate computer problems. As many of you know, my laptop died like a month ago, had to get it replaced. Well, now I broke a microphone, I explained in the last video, and ordered a replacement. I use a Shure 57 or Shure 58 microphone combination with a Blue Icicle, which has worked just phenomenally well for the past 3 years that I've been doing YouTube. Unfortunately, I ordered 2 Blue Icicles, and I think these are just more sensitive than my last one, and it's picking up so much electric current that there's a huge static, and that was the problem for the terrible audio in the last video. So I do apologize for it. I spent the last 2 days trying to research ways to get rid of it. You can go through like Audible or so Adobe Audition or Audacity, or there's all sorts of like virtual cables that you can get. All of them, though, make my voice sound hollow. So in the future, I'm going to try to figure out a solution to it. I've tried so many ways to get rid of the electric. It's not going anywhere. Again, I've wasted over 48 hours trying to figure it out. Hopefully this is good enough audio for you. So if anyone has any suggestions, again, I've basically read every tutorial on the internet. Finally found a good filter that does get rid of the kind of the hiss sound, so that should be gone. But again, you trade it off for a little more hollow sound, and maybe I'm just being too perfectionistic, and this sounds fine. But anywho, let's get right into the spoiler videos. So let's go to the newest spoilers. I haven't seen the ones this morning. I saw the ones yesterday as we talked them over, so these are going to be fresh. Oh yes, I have seen these. Okay, so I've seen all these particular spoilers. And I'll try to give you my in-depth analysis. I know a lot of people don't like the rambly setting of this, but if you want to just see spoilers, I suggest just going to mythicspoiler.com and read them yourself. Otherwise, I'm going to give you my more than unnecessary ramblings of each card. So the first one is Labyrinth Guardian. This is just a filler card. When it becomes with a spell of the target of the speller ability, you sacrifice it, Embalm 4. It's decent. This is a card you can pick up in draft. It's a 2/3. If they're going to spend like even any sort of spell, it's not ability either, so it's a little more resilient than other illusions in the past. But if they want to use the spell to kill this 2/3, you get it back for 4 mana. This is definitely a nice little 15 to 23 pickup for draft. Now the next card I'm very, very excited about, Embalmer's Tools, 2 mana for activated abilities of creatures cards in your graveyard cost 1 less to activate, and then tap an untap zombie you control. Target player puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So the whole thing is because I have a Sidisi Brood Tyrant deck, and this is going to be another insane card for the Sidisi Brood Tyrant. There is quite a few abilities in Standard right now. All of the zombies that have activated abilities that return, all of the Embalm creatures that you're going to get from this set are going to be reduced by 1. And then you like Scrap Heap Scrounger, even though I don't recommend running this with Scrap Heap Scrounger if that's just the card that you're trying to accelerate, because it's just not worth it to use a card to reduce the mana cost by 1. I mean, only 4 cards in your deck. You really need to have ways to bust this card. People already came up with like infinite combos in Commander. Phyrexian Altars 1 with a ton of cards that return back from the graveyard. Reassembly Skeletons, card that a lot of people think about. So anything like a Soul Sister or a Blood Artist becomes an infinite, or there's lots of die effects. Just any sort of die effect plus Embalmer's Tools, plus Phyrexian Altar, plus one of the recurring cards. Is really sweet in Commander. Other than that, I don't think it has that much relevance unless there's a huge Embalm type strategy that you can get going in Standard. I still don't think that you'd want to use this as one of those slots. Let's go on to the next card, which is Lay Claim. 7 mana, you control enchanted permanent, cycling 2. This might be okay with, like, all the cycling cards are going to be relevant because of the card that allows you to cycle for free. I'm already seeing kind of like what we call a cycle storm strategy that is going to occur. Plus, there's other things that trigger off of cycling, like the Drake that puts in a 2/2 Drake. So I think that this one is fine. Late game, this is a bomb card. You can take care of any of your opponent's problematic cards, which is like even Gideon in this case. You can take Marvels, you can take Gideons. If they have an Ulamog out at that point, you can take it. So Lay Claim is pretty powerful. With it is now an enchant permanent. We don't see a lot of enchant permanents, gain control of enchanted permanent in the Commander format. So I think Commander players are going to love Lay Claim. Time to Reflect. 1 mana, exile target creature that blocked or was blocked by a zombie this turn. I think it's playable in basically a zombie deck, other than we have access to Fatal Push and Declaration in Stone. And it can't like kill Saheeli combo because it's not blocking, but a lot of times it's going to get value, blocking or blocked, so defensively or aggressively. I don't know. It's definitely a great limited card, but it gets outclassed in Standard. Now on to my first favorite spoiler card, which is Bloodlust Insider. A lot of you know how much I loved like Generator Servant from the old sets. It's one of my favorite cards ever printed, Generator Servant, even though it didn't really have a standard where it was that great. It didn't have too many creatures. A lot of the creatures that it could enable already had haste that you like wanted to ramp out the mana. But this one's a 1 mana, and it's a 1/1, and target creature gains haste until end of turn. This seems to be a pretty insane ability, especially when you can go grab this with like cards like Ranger of Eos, or you can return this back with Orzhov Charm. So I think that this might have a place in Modern. It also just really, really increases the value of a lot of your cards, your 2-drops in that format. So if you have a good powerful 2-drop or even 3-drop, giving it haste with Bloodless Insider is quite powerful. But in Standard, where I'm going to really love this card is with Hanuar Garrison. I think it's the perfect card in Red-White Humans. It might be enough to push it over the top because it's a 1-drop. That's all you need. I mean, you're going to be running Thraben Inspector. You might be running... There might be some other humans that can be more aggressive. Like just... I would say, though, a 2/1 for 1 is inferior to a 1/1 that can give something later on haste. Like, I don't know. We'll have to test it out. But I think that, like, Hanuar Garrison is definitely the card in Standard on turn 3 that absolutely wants haste when it comes out, and it's hard to enable haste before turn 3 with a lot of the other cards that give haste. We're talking about if you're going to give it, you're going to spend mana to do so, or use your own turn 3 or turn 4 to place down a card that also gives haste. So it's going to be that's going to be the combo. If you don't know what or actually it's Hanuar Militia Captain is the card. If you know what that does, it's a 2/3, I believe, and when it attacks, you put 2 humans into play, tapped and attacking. So this is going to give it haste. It's going to attack in and get the attackers. The other one that it could work with is the other one that when it attacks the Pirate Girl, the 1/3 that puts in the 2/1 for Striker, I believe is what it is. When that's another card that wants haste right off the bat. This can give Scrap Heap Scroungers haste. It can give a lot of cards. It can give Gideon haste, which is really cool. So turn 4, instead of putting a 2/2 out, you can just throw out, activate Gideon, attacking for 5. Not a bad little trade for the Bloodless Insider. If you compare it to cards in the past, this is the most powerful one ever printed. So it's Pauper too. Blinding Mummy, 2 mana. Whenever a zombie enters the battlefield under your control, you may tap target artifact or creature. Mostly this is going to be sorcery speed because Embalm, but there are a lot of instant speed put zombie tokens into play, like Crypt Breaker, for example. Or if you madness in the madness zombie producer, this is another way to do it. There is a few other off to check out. Any zombie that has flash too could work. But Embalm, though, I believe, isn't Embalm just sorcery speed? Yes. Embalm is a sorcery. So you're not going to be able to tap down things in your opponent's turn as easy. But 2 mana for a 2/2 with an upside ability. This could be a nice little tempo cards in a white-black zombies or an Esper zombies list. So I'm not against trying to brew this card. Painted Bluffs, we've seen cards like this plenty of times. It's going to give another one for Commander. Add a color to mana pool, or 1 in tap, add 1 mana of any color to mana pool. Again, we've seen these plenty time and time again. The Vizier of Deferment. So 3 mana for a flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature. If it attacked or blocked this turn, return that card to the battlefield and it's under control at the beginning of next end step. It's another flicker card, but it requires a combat to occur. So your opponent needs to attack in if you're on the defense. But most of the time, what 2-drops do you want to flicker in? There's not a ton to get the greatest activated abilities at the moment. There's the Dwarf that puts in a 1/1 servo token. But I mean, even if we have to think this is a later curve, it's not bad. So yeah, it's fine. Again, it takes a lot more work. It just doesn't, it's no just Restoration Angel or the 3/1, the Flicker Wisp, but it's close. So it's playable. It probably will see play. We have a lot of flicker type effects right now in the game, so possibly it won't see as much play as it could until those go out. But any sort of ETB effect is going to be great with this. It can also exile the opponent's attacking creature and return it to the battlefield under its control at the beginning of next end step. So even that's like, you can reset a Gideon, for example, or reset kind of a Hardicaron. Who knows, maybe in like the Flash deck, blue-white Flash Spirits, this could be the Reflector Mage replacement. Definitely not nearly as powerful though. Heart Piercer Manticore, 4 mana. When Heart Piercer Manticore enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, it deals damage equal to that creature's power to target creature player. This is going to be a very good card in Limited, but it's kind of your bulky rare. It's a Flame Tongue Kavu with a huge downside. Like, what I mean, Flame Tongue Kavu has got a very similar power and a very similar converted mana cost. It also does have the Embalm, but it does say another creature, so you can't even sacrifice itself. So it's going to be a lot more difficult to get value out of the Heart Piercer Manticore. Again, this is a great bomb in Limited. I don't think it's playable in Standard or in Constructed. So keep that in mind. I would pick these up highly, though, in Limited. Glorious End. End the turn. At the beginning of your next end step, you lose the game. This is something that is a red counterspell. It's a red Stifle. It's a red exile spells on the stack. It's a red take an extra turn. No, because you'll lose at the beginning of your next end step. So yeah, it doesn't actually take an extra turn. This is something you'll play on your opponent's turn, most likely. And it's kind of a panic button for sure, or set up. It is kind of a take an extra turn because you end the turn, like you go to your through your turn, take your turn, and then at the beginning of your opponent's upkeep, you Glorious End. Then you take your turn, and basically it's like another time walk. But I mean, that's a huge downside of you have one turn to try to do something. I think it's actually standard playable, and it's going to lead to some shenanigans. So I'm not going to complain about Glorious End. Sandworm Convergence, 7 or 8 mana. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. At the beginning of your end step, create a 5/5 green worm creature token. Sure. Commander card, 8 mana. Somehow to cheat this into play. Is it going to be good enough for like Aetherworks Marvel to cheat into play? I highly doubt it. But I mean, it's other ways. Any sort of enchantment reanimation. I know there is some if you go back into Modern by returning an enchantment from your graveyard into play. I mean, we haven't had a lot of high converted mana cost enchantments in the past. This is a lot weaker than, as far as like I'm trying to think of like Modern. It can shut down some infinite combos like the Restoration Angel Kiki Jiki combo. It shuts down. At least they can't attack you. But I don't think there's enough value for this being 8 mana. It's just too much work. In Limited, I try to avoid 8 mana spells unless we're in a very, very slow format, and this does not seem to be particularly slow of a format. So I don't know how I feel about this card. All right, so here is a card we need to read, which is Dispossess. This one's kind of cool. Name an artifact card, search target player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. That player shuffles his library. There's only 3 cards, I think, that in the current standard you would really need to worry about. There is Aetherlux Reservoir Dex, so you can just get rid of, if their combo is to win with Aetherlux Reservoir, you cast this, you win the game. You can't you can't currently do that with the one we're using right now. What is the one? Let's look at the source here. It doesn't have it. The name a non-artifact. So this one can name the artifact. So it's Aetherworks Reservoir, Aetherworks Marvel, and Torrential Gearhulk would be where you bring this in. And I do think that those are relevant enough targets to put this in the sideboard and justify it running over the other one. Because Marvel decks, I think if you get rid of the Marvel, they do become very clunky, especially if they're running Ulamog. And it's actually better to name Aetherworks Marvel than the other one that can't get Marvel that can get Ulamog, because then they can still grind you out with value. And same thing with like the Torrential Gearhulk deck. The best thing you can usually name is like Glimmer of Genius, or maybe they have another alternate win con. Like the earlier Torrential Gearhulks used to always also run Thing in the Ice. This is pre-Fatal Push, and that would usually their win con would be a mix between the two. So if you name their Thing in the Ice, a lot of times they didn't have enough oomph to really push through. But I think if the all-in Torrential Gearhulk decks, this is a great sideboard answer against the all-in. So Marvel decks as well, you can take care of their card that's cheating things into play and their value card. And of course, Aetherworks Reservoir. Beyond that, like Panharmonicon, I'm trying to think of any of it. Metalwork Colossus, are any of those worth it? You don't want to run Heart of Kron or name Heart of Kron here. Or even, I guess you could name the bigger vehicle that seldom sees play anymore, the Sky Silver and Console's flagship. But the reason why I don't want to run name Heart of Kron is it's coming out usually after Heart of Kron is cast. It's also taking your turn 3, and that is not what you want to be doing against Mardu vehicles, is using Dispossess your turn 3, then they drop a Gideon, they're way far ahead. So anyway, just some food for thought with that card. We have the Spring Mind. Search your library for basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Nothing wrong with that. And draw 2 cards as the Aftermath. It's a value card. It's fine. Some sort of green-blue Torrential Gearhulk deck might want this because you could actually flashback the mind portion of it. So I think that's perfectly acceptable. I think it works that way. Yeah, split cards, I think that it can actually target because it counts. It's a sorcery instant, is its card types. So, you know, and here's another thing for Delirium. Even if you're not even running blue, for example, maybe Spring is worth it to go get a basic land and have a sorcery instant in the... at that point, I don't think so. But there's some... I'm sure everyone is undervaluing these split cards. Let's go to Commit Memory. Put a target spell or non-land permanent into its owner's library second from the top. That's fine. It's a counter spell, 4 mana, and then or just returning a spell back, you know, on top of his library. All these cards are always worthwhile. I love drafting these in limited because you usually get them later, these type of effects, but this is gonna be a rare, so you can't rely on it. And then Memory, Aftermath. Each player shuffles their hand and enters his graveyard and draws 7 cards. Yeah, I guess that's fine for a control deck once you get up to that point and you have plenty of counter spells. The thing is, like, Memory gets more commits, which is actually pretty good. So I'm not against this at all. I think this might be a card that surprises us. Cascading Cataracts. This is another card that a lot of my Commander players are excited about, especially 4 and 5 color Commander decks. Even 3, even 2 color Commander decks are pretty good because Soul Ring exists. So does Thran Dynamo. So does a lot of other accelerants in the form of colorless mana. This can filter all of your colorless mana sources into mana of any color combination you want. So it's a good fixing land early on. It's fine. I don't really think that it's necessary in Standard right now until we see Nicol Bolas as a 3-color card that might be hard to fix your mana properly. I might run this in like a Deploy the Gatewatch type deck. The same thing when you're running a 5-color deck. And it's perfectly acceptable. So it's also indestructible, which is cool for a land. So any sort of animating a land. So we've seen this with the Darksteel Citadel. Of course, that's an artifact, so it's key cards that you put on that as in Soul Artifact. But if there is some sort of enchant land later on, or turn a land into a creature, I can think of like Nissa can do that right now in Standard. That's not bad. Having an indestructible land that you can then have some insane things happen to it. So keep that in mind. It's not legendary. It's perfectly acceptable card. It's a great Commander card. Other than who spoiled it. Ugh, gross. Anyway, let's go into Hieroglyphic Illumination. Draw 2 cards. Cycling. These, do not underestimate these. I think just the cantrips of cycling of 1 are quite powerful. Just for delirium's sake, you can get an instant into your graveyard turn 1, and also think of Thermal Alchemist and Thing in the Ice. This is Thought Scour, Ponder, Preordain. Of course, Ponder, Preordain, those Thought Scours do a lot more. Like Thought Scour puts 2 cards in your graveyard and itself and draw a card. This only puts 1. But anything that activates off cycling, anything that activates off discarding, anything that activates off of casting a spell, no, it doesn't work off casting a spell. So not Torrential Gear, or not Thing in the Ice. Duh. Retraction there. You have to actually cast this. But the 4 mana for instant speed draw 2 cards isn't that what Inspiration does already? And those are playable. I mean, this could be Glimmer, a replacement to Glimmer of Genius. It doesn't add the energy, but if the Torrential Gearhook deck doesn't care about the energy, I know the Scry 2 is, yeah, way more powerful though, but cycling this early to give you a target for Torrential Gearhook might be worthwhile. I don't know. Debut. So this is called Start and Finish. Create 2 1/1 white warrior creature tokens. Whoa, they're warriors. That's cool. So it can actually work with the good old warrior frontier strategy. And then the finish is you may it's instant speed, or no, it's sorcery. That's I wish this was reversed. You can sacrifice a creature to destroy a creature. This is a really good limited card. Just there's better things in standard. So it's not bad though. It's 2 1/1s and then later on destroy a creature off 1 card. That is absolutely not a bad card. Very, very good limited. All right, now here's my favorite cards spoiled so far. Spoiler alert from my top 10 video. This will probably be number 1. It's going to have a hard time overtaking this because this is just a Brewer's Paradise. This is called Shadow of the Grave. 2 mana, return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn. So, of course, this goes with my pet card, Waste Not. This is insane with Waste Not. So, you Waste Not, then next turn you cast a card like Dark Deal, or the Reforge the Soul, or Burning Inquiry, or Faithless Looting. I don't think you really want Faithless Looting, but Burning Inquiry goes here. Dark Deal, Burning Inquiry, and there's a few other that each player discards their hand and draws cards. So, and then you can do it to yourself too. If you have any ways for you to discard cards and draw cards, which is so many cards out of this is Cathartic Reunion, for example. Return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that you cycled or discarded this turn. The combo with this in standard is going to be the enchantment that allows you to cycle cards for free. That allows you basically to just cycle through as many cards in your hand, return all those back to your hand. If you have any sort of other madness discard stuff, you can return those. So there is some pretty... Doesn't it work with... I wonder if madness... it exiles it, then you cast it. So it's probably a different card at that point, so it might not count. I wonder if we can get a ruling on this, because madness definitely is discarding a card. And if you madness it like Fiery Temper and still cast it, can you then return it with Shadow of the Grave because it was discarded? That is not bad. Also, this can protect your hand against discard. If there ever was like a Rakdos return type card, other than that would be it'd be discarded. I mean, you'd have to keep this one particularly in your hand. So if it's not targeting your entire hand, yeah, you could get everything back. But I just think that this card is begging to be broken. And at 2 mana, those are these type of spells. This at 3, it'd be unplayable. At 1, it'd probably be too broken. At 2, this is where it gets really, really cool because it's probably perfectly balanced. And I'm going to do my best to bust this card. Waste Not is the card I want to play with it first, but there's definitely other ways that, with like the Burning Inquiry, of course, from Modern. And then you have Cathartic Reunion, Tormenting Voice. A lot of other cards that the discard a bunch of cards. Like anything that has an activation of discard a card, Shadow of the Grave is actually pretty good. Do we have any in standard at the moment? I think the Snake from green. There's a few vampires that discard cards. Not very many that discard cards in like bulk for free. We'll have to look at everything that discards a card. We'll pull it up. I guarantee you this is going to make my top 10 list, so we'll be brewing around this card a lot. One of my goals for this time around is to brew a deck with all of my top 10 cards. I know I've said that before, and I've been pretty terrible at doing that, but this one I'm going to make a commitment to do so. So anyway, a little bit of a side note here. I'm going to try to be brewing a ton more. Once I get all the computer problems figured out, we'll be back on track. All right, so here's some we have to read. Blood Fury Militant, which is a Minotaur, a 4/3. When enters the battlefield, discard a card. There you go. There's a little way to trigger off madness. Not bad for a 4/3 to then get a Fiery Temper, or anything that actually gets value by being in the graveyard. We're thinking the Prized Amalgam here. This might actually be pretty good with Prized Amalgam. It's a 4/3 for 2 mana. You know, chuck in something you're going to get value out of later on. You can't go wrong with that. It's in the red. It's in the color that actually wants this the most. This is very, very playable. Okay, the next one, Harvest Season. 2 and a green. Sorcery. Search your library for X basic land cards from your library and put them onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. X is equal number of tapped creatures you control. That's fine. There are plenty of ways to bust this, in Commander especially. But if you have a bunch of tapped creatures in Standard, my tokens deck might want this to ramp into something later on. So you go like turn 1, a creature, turn 2, cast another creature, turn 3, you want to cast something like the Servo guy. Then you have turn 2 Crypt of Right, for example. Turn 3, tap out all your creatures. You usually would have at that point 4 creatures on the battlefield. This can go at 4 lands. That's not bad. It might be too much to work up to it to make it to justify playing this, but it's in EDH. This is going to be very, very good. So anyway, we'll go on to Cradle of the Curse. This is another desert. Add a colorless mana pool, and then you can sack it later on to make a 2/2. That's fine. Absolutely fine. All these cards Eldrazi want for sure. So I don't know if this would be the one of choice. The Grasping Dunes can give a creature a -1/1 counter. That's great. Eldrazi, perfect. It can kill an annoying card later on, like a Toolcraft Exemplar, early even. We have Oketra's Attendant. It has a cycling of 2 and then a Embalm of 5. Again, do not underestimate these. They seem pretty good because this is free and all. Like, it doesn't cost you a card to cycle it and embalm it. It is a huge mana investment, but that's not terrible. 2 mana cycling to get a card in your graveyard. This is, again, with the Living End. If Living End transitions over to I think they have enough now for Esper. Or who even knows, they might have enough for different color combinations. And it's a fine choice for that particular. A lot of the Living Ends don't want to be the 3 toughness because then that puts them in the Anger of Gods range. But I mean, all of these cards in the past have been playable. Gideon's Intervention, 4 mana. As it enters the battlefield, choose a card name your opponent can't cast. Spells with the chosen name and prevent all damage that would be dealt to you by permanents you control by the source of the chosen name. It's a fine hate card. They have to deal with it. It does shut down sort of the combo for the Saheeli combo until they get rid of it. It is in the fragmentized range, but it's definitely not. It's not a terrible card for sideboard. It's so versatile that I could see this really helping its all-in strategies. But most of the Saheeli combos have answers to enchantments. They are running fragmentized or the shuffle an artifact or enchantment back in because people already did try Dampening Pulse as an answer, as well as Authority of the Consuls, and most of the 4-color Saheelis already play around them. So I still don't think it's a great idea to try to be proactively trying to hate out Saheeli unless you also get some value against other things. So you just have to push through it. And eventually I still think the combo needs to be banned. I don't think that we've seen anything that is just a silver bullet against the deck come out of Amonkhet. The Vizier of Many Faces, 4 mana for a clone, and it's got Embalm. So awesome. This is such an awesome card. It's a free clone for 5 mana, or just a clone twice. I know we've had, like, Cackling Counterparts, but this is in creature form. So a lot of my decks will definitely want this in Commander, because clone effects are so good in Commander. When you have multiple opponents, there's always going to be something that's going to be better than the mana cost you put into it. But I think this could see standard play just because the Embalm effect is something that you can actually throw this card away and get value out of it out of discard. I think we're going to see a lot of Madness / Embalm / Cathartic Reunion type strategies become very viable. And this will be one of those cards that I think is going to be worthwhile to put in that type of deck. We got to the rest of the cards in the other spoiler videos. If you want to look at those, go ahead and check those out. Hope you enjoyed this analysis. I mean, I know these decks are kind of shoddy. I just kind of throw them together. But, you know, a lot of people come here from my unique perspective. There aren't a lot of people that look at Magic with the same, like, the same filter of how can I, you know, synergize or rogue this particular card. So if you enjoy these spoiler videos, give it a thumbs up, and I'll try to do a whole primer when we get the entire set, and maybe we'll check out some draft strategies and some sealed strategies and see what we can come up with. I appreciate all of the support through this trying times. Again, we're still, the YouTube analytics are so off. My channel is beyond bugged. Everything is down about 80%. Views, subs, dislikes, everything across the board. And I've spoken to many YouTubers, and it seems to happen just out of the blue. And then all of them have assured me that it corrects itself. So it's some sort of like YouTube internal audit, and it drops a ton of subs. It quits promoting your videos, and then within a while, it just reverts back to normal. So I'm hoping that's the case, as it's been very, very frustrating these past few weeks with the laptop issue, with the audio issue, with everything else. Hope the audio is okay. I think I'm going to try to get some more things here to kind of dampen the echo. That might be what's causing the more hollow tone to this as well. But anyway, if anyone has some solutions for the buzzing or the humming or the hissing sound that the blue icicle is causing, if I should just return both of them, maybe they're both faulty. Still need to call customer support and see if that's the case, if they're just more sensitive to electric current than the old ones were. Anyway, this has been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.